Right, welcome back everyone to part 8 of the journey. In the last video I said at the end, escape the mind, which really the maze is. It's the reason why we chose the name for the channel, Escape the Maze, because the mind is representation of the maze. Okay, so it's the maze of the mind that we're breaking out of. So like I say, these videos now are going to jump up a little bit. If what I'm saying is making sense to you, then great, and let's carry on this journey. If it's a little bit of nonsense to people out there, like I say, and they're happy in what they're doing, that might just be like not your time, or you haven't heard any calling, or you're happy with what you're doing in your lives. So that's fair enough, you know, that's fair enough. But we're going to jump up a little bit, and last time we sort of said about the world and the mind and the imagination and what this box is. So we're going to carry on with that now, because now we're starting to get into the essence of what this journey is really all about. So the mind, right, so everything in here, the box is the mind, right? That's where we've been taken, that's where we've been reduced. This, all the intelligence, what people call it, everything, all the words, numbers and descriptions and everything else is the mind, right? If you go to the doctors and you ask the doctor where the mind is, he won't be able to tell you, right? Because it's just the brain, okay? If you look in there at the structure, you just won't be able to find the mind. You go, well, where's my mind? Well, you can't. It's an illusion. It's been created like everything else. So what I'm proposing here on this journey, what I'm saying is that the control structure, what we live in, the mind, has been superimposed over our true imagination. Now, it's said that most people, 99.9, using their numbers and everything else, 99.9 of people what live their entire lives don't have one original thought their whole lives. Well, I'd say that's 100, right? Because I don't feel that anything in here can be original. That can't be, because it's already been done. So the mind shrinks us down. It shrinks us away from who and what we truly are. So you've got to control that mind, haven't you? You've got to control that box for us all to live in, because anyone escape outside of this finite box, what we all live in, is going to go into a space of true and actual realization about everything what goes on around them. They're going to, like we said before, they're going to connect with all of nature. They're going to lose the programming of what the definitions have been put into them, and start reconnecting and start growing relationships back to how they used to be with all sentient beings in all kingdoms around them. And they're going to start caring for them kingdoms, and they're going to start seeing them for what they've been programmed to see them for. Everything's living in pure intentions and harmony with each other. Well, you're going to become that. You're going to start breaking out of this, and that can't be allowed. That can't happen. You know, like if you take the word government, let's take the word government, right? Government, right? And this is nothing to do with, this is just a government. If this is just a quick teach on what words mean. Right, so if this is the mind, right? This box means mind, right? That's what it translates at. Means mind, right? So now you can see government means mind. So that's to govern the mind, right? So this is all to be governed. This is all to be controlled as a structure for us, like I said before, not to be breaking out of. Because, like we said, the last thing, and that journeys to remember, But the last thing with this containment of where we live in this box is for us to zoom out, for us to expand out of this box and start actually looking at it for what it is. You know, because this box, this mind here, what we all live in, is artificial. It has to be artificial. It really does. When you get into it, it has to be an artificial construct. It has to be an artificial. Because this has all been programmed with images and everything else for us to believe in and take us away from ourselves. Well, why would you do that? But it has to be artificial. And this is where I look at stuff like in a way where people are talking about being chipped and all that. And you know, we're being chipped, we're doing this and you know, we're being seen. But we were already chipped. We're thousands and thousands of years behind the game here. Because the mind is artificial. The mind has to be the original AI unit. Everything in it is artificial. We're artificial within that. Because we've been taken away from our true selves. We've been kidnapped from birth, like I said. So if we're in an artificial construct, and that construct is inside our heads and it's called the mind, where we're mined for our energy, then that has to be artificial. That had to have been constructed by someone. And if it's constructed by someone, that mind, that has to be artificial. Because if that mind has to be nonsense, right? Nonsense. Because if it isn't nonsense, then we wouldn't be living the way that we are. There wouldn't be all the destruction and everything else around us, because we'd have sense of who we were. We'd have a moral compass of right and wrong, what's already been designed within us, what we remember, and we wouldn't harm anything because we're in sense. So this mind, what we're going to get into, for me, has to be artificial. It has to be an AI construct. It has to be. Because with all the nonsense, what goes on from there, to take us away from ourselves, to turn us into destructive beings, because this is destructive. If we were outside of here, in our true imagination, which lived outside, this box is minuscule, it's here. And our imagination, our true imagination, is infinite. But we've been shrunken down into here to live into the mind. What is controlled has to be, and that's the original AI unit, it's original artificial intelligence unit for us to live in. It has to be. It's because we have been taught that everything, if we're artificial right now, if we live in the control of the mind, then the people that created this, or the entities that created this for us to live in, would have to, if they wanted us to live in a certain way and under a certain rule, then this, in actuality, this mind, the box, this mind, turns us in to biological mechanical robots. Because if all we know is in here, and all we're taught is in here, then that mind in our heads is all what we've got, and has turned us into synthetic beings, right? In destruction, what we don't really know because we live in here and this is all we've been taught. Then the last thing that the control structure in here wants us to find out is our imagination, to go back to our own true imagination, because we'll see this exactly for what it is, and this will no longer exist to us. It can't exist to us if we're in sense. And this is where it gets really, really funky with the gates coming through, because this is where we live. This is where we live in the mind. We've lost our own imaginations. So therefore, if we lost our own imaginations and we start finding out about this and start coming through the gates and breaking out of the maze of the mind, then what we have to do is get our bridging skills, like we said, really, really online, because we're starting to go into remembering who we are, and in actuality, that is starting to give us our own imaginations. You know, this is why we start seeing all of these, for what they are. They're control structures. They're a story to lead us away from ourselves. Each one of these is an image what's been put into the mind, our artificial mind, to take us away from who and what our imagination truly is, so that we can't form a relationship with anything, really, because we are in their mind. We are stuck in their mind, and that mind's destructive. So each one, like I said, is a story to lead us into that place where it is made of concrete, and unless we break out of that, this story, this linear story, what is going on here, is just going to continue, as in the word status quo. Nothing changes in here. This is why they say history repeats itself, because it does. All what happens is, with this, is that technology just gets more and more and more and more advanced. And that technology is what we base our evolution on. But because we haven't got the full story of who and what we really are or were, then that will look at this as evolution where we are now. But perhaps it isn't. Perhaps we've been de-evolved. But what we got here, we've got time. So if we've been de-evolved and we know that within the story, then we have to reconnect with everything that we have to deprogram ourselves from every one of these, every one of them, to reconnect back to our imaginations and get out of the maze of the mind. Because the mind is the construct, the AI unit, what is forcing us to be in someone else's story, in someone else's story, in his story. His story is the mind. They built the mind for us to live in. And then they govern the mind by giving us the illusion of free will and free choice, which doesn't exist within here. This is why we have to find out what this is, so that we can break out of this to go back to have a free will choice and can reconnect to who and what we truly are out of this box, out of this mind. So that was just an add-on to this. We're gonna get into this a lot more. We're gonna break it down a little bit along the journey, but this is just an overshoot. This is just an overview of what's actually going on. So I trust that you're starting to get a little bit of a quick punchy one just to get this through. But if you are struggling with this, and this is massive, this is big, what we're saying here. If you are struggling with it a bit, just slow it down. Just slow it all down. Because what I'm actually introducing here is a big part of the story as well. A big, big part. So, okay, so I'll leave it there, and we'll do another couple, I think, on this later on. Because we'll get into this a little bit more on the journey back of what happened. So, much love from Escape the Maze, much love from me, and I'll see you soon. Take it easy.